Thanks. Okay, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you guys again to the Eastern Credit Union Tobago Entrepreneurial Bootcamp 4-part educational webinar series, March 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 8th. Today, we have another great panel to speak to you guys, led by Mr. Kevin Valley, Chartered Business Valuator. And he's going to speak to you guys on building an investable business during a pandemic. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Valley to introduce himself and his team.
Sure. If I may just be able to share my screen, I should have that privileges now, right?
You should.
Okay. No, I don't. Elena, may I please share my screen? And while Elena's setting that up, I would just like everybody to just jump in the chat and wish Elena a happy birthday. Elena's been working very hard on putting this whole series together for longer than either me or Stefan want to admit. But we really appreciate her work and we want to celebrate her today. So let's jump in the chat and say happy birthday, Elena. Okay, Elena, I still can't share though. All right. Okay, sharing time. All right. Okay, so how to build an investable business. So I left out the inner pandemic part because an investable business is an investable business no matter the environment, be it pandemic, tsunami, world disaster. An investable business remains an investable business. So as Stefan introduced, my name is Kevin Valley. I'm the managing director and founder of Become Investible. The two good-looking people you see alongside me here today, Alicia Cooper and Zenon Alain. They are my co-founders. We have a third one, Zara Alain, joining us shortly. But before I really get into who is Become Investible and who is the team and everything, I want to show you guys a nice, interesting video that we put together for you.
Become Investible is a business advisory company which specializes in helping investors select small and medium-sized companies. Each founder has over 10 years of experience in their field, with knowledge ranging from investment banking and finance to engineering and private sector development. BI uses its signature methodology to assess business models and identify those which meet investors' established criteria. It also guides business owners to create more investable businesses, with over 50 owners and industry experts featured on its Caribbean Power Lunch podcast and Become Investible webinars. BI is driven by a need to stimulate private company development that will create jobs and generational wealth. It believes that a strong, active private investment ecosystem is needed to support that change. BI is committed to build the foundation of this ecosystem by addressing the challenges that investors and business owners face and creating greater understanding between the two groups. BI believes that empowering business owners with the knowledge to create better systems prepares them to attract strong investor partners and produce positive results for all.
So if that video wasn't clear, who are we? We are essentially business advisors. We specialize in helping companies prepare themselves to attract investment and also actually helping them raise investment. And to do so, we work with companies to unpack their strengths and to try and fortify their weaknesses. So wherever they fall short in their business model, we work with them to build that up so that they could present a credible investment case to investors. So we have a diverse set of experience. Alicia and I have been in investment banking, even finance. Alicia's even funded real estate, media projects and what have you. Zenon has been an engineer for the past decade and some. Sarah's in project management and private sector development. So what we're going to talk about today, all right? So 3 main takeaways. But before we get into that, I want to know, let's kind of jump into the chat now. This is a 2-hour session, and we don't want to just talk to you for 2 hours and you just sit down with your coffee and listen. We want to get a lot of interaction. You want to get engagement, right? So how many people here? Let's jump in the chat. jump in the chat. How many people here own a business? Let's say own. Let's find the chat. Own.
That's great.
All right. A lot of owners. Okay.
Wow, yeah.
All right, and my own and Stefan, you own too? Okay. All right. So this includes, of course, self-employed, as well as if you have a small business that you own yourself, right? If you are self-employed, so maybe you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you have your own private practice. Just put private practice in the chat right now. Or even if you're a graphic designer, you're a freelancer, you're a social media strategist, or what have you. You're a solopreneur, you work with yourself. Let's put PP, all right? PP.
Concise.
PP. Okay, so we have 2 PPs. All right. Melanie, Josanne. Who else? All right. Great. So how many of you have actually tried to raise funding for your business? Raise funding for it to grow, to scale, or just to get to the next leg? Because, business, well, a lot of you own, right? So business is from one leg to the next. How many of you have ever tried to raise money just to get to the next leg? Let's put try to raise or
money sign.
Put dollars. Make it raise.
Money sign.
Right. Okay.
All right, Anisha. Yeah. Deborah. Okay. Deborah. Anybody else? Josanne, you put the $4 signs like you got the money. All right. How many of you actually got the money? How many of you got a yes from investors? They cut the check and you're able to get that. You have another investor partner on board and you're able to take that money and plow it into your business. Just put one, W-O-N. I'll wait. And that's the problem.
We have a couple winners.
All right, congratulations, Anisha. Congratulations. Krayana, I hope I don't butcher your name, Krayana. Congratulations, Krayana.
Deborah.
No, sorry, Anisha, Deborah. All right. You see, so you see a lot of people went silent, right? So there are a lot of owns and there are about 2 wins, right? See, that is a problem. That's the problem here today. We start businesses. Businesses are there to create jobs and create generational wealth for ourselves, but we are unable to take our businesses to the next level. We're unable to get the money we need to employ people to help us to build our dreams. All right. So today what we're going to talk about, what's the key first steps to becoming an owner? What are the common mistakes that business owners make when trying to raise money? And how to make your business investable, how to land the deal. All right, come on. All right. Now, the key first steps. Who can guess the first step? Anybody, real quick. Don't be afraid to guess it. Don't be afraid to guess it. We all friends inside of here. All right, Shanice. Business plan, right.
That's a good guess.
Yeah. Stefan, can you change name to market research? All right, restaurant and business. Ooh, but that's a hurdle in itself. Boy. Oh Lord. All right. Location. Oh, you mean getting a location? Oh, you mean for a physical business? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step. I don't know why this. Okay. So the first step is to find your why. All right. And we'll go through each step in a minute. But the first step, just bear with me, find your why. Then after you find your why, you want to develop that idea. You want to make sure that idea has sense. You want to make sure that there's a market for your idea, that there's product market fit. All right. Then very importantly, you want to choose your team. Who are the people you want to who are going to buy into your vision with you and work with you to build this dream. Because this why is based on a problem that you would have identified in the market, a pain, a big pain that you think a lot of people will be feeling, right? Because people pay to solve pain. People, sometimes people spend money on what they want and are nice to have, but they really pay for a need to have. All right, so you want to understand your risk. What's your risk appetite? Because there are a lot of owners inside here. You understand the risk of owning a business versus being an employee and getting that steady salary, right? Big risk. And then, of course, you have to become investable. And we'll show you how today. So find your why. Where is the love? Where is the love? What is your mission, your vision, your purpose for this business? If it's just to make money, you won't get very far, because your motivation won't take you very far unless you really, really, really need the money. But even then, you want to find a problem that is big, that's big for a lot of people, right? So start with a purpose for a business. If it's just that, oh, I'm sick of this job, I'm sick of my boss, they only fighting me down, I'm sick of the school worker, I don't like her, that's not a great reason to start a business, right? That's a great reason to find another job. But if it is that you get this niggling feeling in your bones, in your veins, that I am destined for something more, for something else. I am destined to solve this particular problem. I keep seeing this problem over and over and over again. So I'll give you an example for me. There are a lot of owners inside of here, and there were two people who said that they were able to raise capital. As an investment banker, I saw a lot of owners coming into my office trying to raise capital for their business. And I want to root for them, because I see the value of entrepreneurship. I see where the business could go. However, the business plans, as some of you identify, the business models and the business proposals that you put out, for lack of a better term, half-baked. And there are too many gaps in the business models, in investment proposals, that cannot expose my investor clients to, right? And that's how the financial institutions, sorry about that, the financial institutions make their money, by investing in profitable businesses, right? So they're not in any business of actually saying, okay, well, here's why we didn't invest in you, and let me help you become investable. There's a dearth in people providing that kind of service. So I said, okay, here's an opportunity here, and here's a big problem where we could provide a solution. So that was my why. Okay, so the next step, you wanna really develop that idea. You wanna have a nice brainstorming session, and this is why it's good to have a team with you, because if it's just you alone, you're predisposed to your own certain ideas, your own certain mindset, your own certain ways of doing things. You want to have a team with you that could bounce off ideas, that could even spark different ideas within your subconscious that you weren't even aware of, you weren't even cognizant of, right? So you really want to take the time to jot it down, get it posted, just like it's pictured here. You want to get it on the board and really map it out and see what makes sense, right? What can you create that will differentiate your business from the competitors? We're going to get into common mistakes soon, but a big mistake I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners make when it comes to raise financing is that they say, hey, there are no competitors to what I'm doing. Nobody is doing what I'm doing. I will own the market. However, before a new business comes into the fore, we're all living just fine, right? We're all, we are waking up, we're doing what you have to do, we're going about our business, we are solving a problem a different way. But again, this is why it goes back to a business being there to solve a problem. The products and services are just a vehicle to solve that problem. All right, so you want to really research your market and existing competitors. Who else is solving that particular problem, maybe in a different way than you're offering? Really understand your customers. We talk about customers. We don't talk about identifying the target customers, right? So who can you solve the biggest problem for? Who can you create the biggest degree of change for? Who do you like working with? And who is willing to pay a premium for your product? And why would they pay a premium for your product? All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Alicia Cooper. Alicia loves to talk about risk, but temperature check before we go on to Alicia. So far, is everybody with me? Everybody okay? Anybody has any questions? Because we definitely have time to answer them. With you, all right, Lyndon. Going good, all right, Rihanna. Rihanna, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name right, because I'm just pronouncing it different every time. Dina, all right, Shanice, all right. So Alicia, tell us, what is your risk appetite?
Right, so this is not a topic that a lot of people love to talk about, but it's something that we need to address, which is risk. So we divide the risk kind of into two buckets, right? So the first bucket that I want to talk about would be the risk of your business. So your company risk, right? And that essentially looks at, okay, well, what are the things that could take my business under? What is the exposure of my business? I'll give you an example of, let's say you are a service company or even a retail company. And you have one customer that attributes or counts for more than 50% of your revenue. You're basically living at the mercy of that customer, because God forbid they go out of business themselves or their situation changes so they can no longer patronize you. You end up going out of business. Same thing on the supplier side. If you're somebody that needs to purchase inputs for your product or service from somebody else, and that person is contributing basically all of your inputs, you're basically almost a subsidiary for that business, because if they're out of business, you're out of business. So that's why we talk about diversification in terms of the way you operate, and then also looking at, diversifying your customer base. Once you identify who your target customers are there other people that you could also solve a similar problem for? So that's what we mean when we talk about business risk. And of course, given the current environment, we've seen that a lot of businesses have suffered. And some of that is due to simply the environment. If we want to, be gentle about it. But the other side of that is, we only build businesses that are clunky and inflexible, meaning they're unable to pivot, to use a buzzword of 2020. Then you do open yourself up to a lot of risk. So I'll give you the example of Blockbuster. I don't know if you all heard of Blockbuster recently. If not, it's because they don't exist. They saw the coming change with Netflix as unnecessary and something that was just a fad. So they were inflexible to change, and you can see what the result of that was. The other risk that I'm sure all those of you who are business owners know this, is that you have the potential for reduced income. When you're getting a salary, it's fixed. And at least for a time, right? It's fixed while you're employed. So that's great. But then when you start a business, assuming you leave your job to do so, there's a potential that you're reducing your income. And worse yet, you may be working twice as many hours for that reduced income. And of course, some of a risk that we don't always take into account is, what am I giving up to build this business? Am I giving up family life? Am I giving up my friends? The things that keep me sane? What am I giving up to build this business? And is that something that I'm really willing to take on, particularly when it can be a very slow road to success? So those are the things, but nobody else can answer this question for you as to what your personal risk appetite is. That is up to you, the individual. So the other components that we identified when building a business, which Kevin touched on earlier, is choosing the right team. So there are two components again to this one as well. Is that, the first one is, okay, we all come together and we agree we want to achieve this particular mission and vision. But what is required to get me there? Am I putting the right butts in the right seats, right? So do I have the skills that are required to drive this bus to the ultimate, goal? And really kind of being willing and able to assess whether or not folks are contributing in the way they've agreed to contribute. And how do we putting systems in place so that we can address things that, as they come up early on. So perhaps somebody really said they really enjoyed writing contracts. I don't know who that is, but somebody out there may say they like writing contracts. And that person realizes, guess what? I really don't like writing contracts. So then you may have to address that very quickly and resolve that conflict early on. So things like that always happen, but it's understanding what skill sets are needed. And of course, having the right culture and values in place is something that I don't think a lot of business owners put a lot of time and effort into, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it translates to dollars and cents quickly, but it can really hamper your business if you don't at least think about this. What kind of place and environment do you really want to show up to every day? That same job that you may be running from, it could be an environmental issue. It could be that the values and culture of that place that you're working in is not in line with your values. So identify what your values are and then really measure fit when you're hiring people or bringing people onto your team. Make sure that their values align with yours, so that the culture is such that you want to show up and you enjoy showing up and that you have a successful business.
All right. So we identified 7 common business mistakes that companies make, especially when presenting to investors, right? So Alicia just spoke about not building the right team. And of course, that's the first one, because it all starts with your HR strategy, right? You want to make sure that you have an HR strategy in line with your business strategy. And by having that HR strategy, you know, okay, who are the people I need, or at least what type of people I need on my team, right? Because if you have the wrong people on your team, well, you're dead in the water, right? You're going to have your company performance hampered because of poor team fit and lack of capabilities. Alicia also just spoke about skills and systems and culture and values, right? So the goal is to identify the skills needed for key positions, look at your onboarding practices, you know, and the things, right? So we know this sounds like what big companies do, but it doesn't need to be as formalized as it sounds. At least just have it, even if you have it on a note to yourself on Microsoft Word document somewhere that's saved in business docs or business strategy or something like that. Once you know that there's a formula, there's a system, and there's criteria that you look for within your business when onboarding a team. Because this is like the long-term effect of poor team selection, no succession planning. So a big mistake. And you hear entrepreneurs say it all the time. And let me know if you heard this before. You ever heard a business owner say, I need to get to the office because if I'm not there, then people ain't know what they're doing. Say yes if you ever heard anything sounding remotely like that. My current situation as an employee, right, Janice? Yeah. Janice, that your company sounds risky. You know, you may need to, depend on your skill set, may be able to onboard you and become investable, right? So you never want to be in a position where, and I mean, you see, I'm presenting with a team here today. We could have been presenting anything. It could have been Xanon presenting, it could have been Alicia presenting. We all understand this to a T, because we make sure that there's no lack of, okay, if one person not here, then we can't continue. The business can't go on. You understand me? So you do not want to make a business dependent on a key person, especially yourself. I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough. You know, you want to make sure you train people in the main functions of your key roles. You want to make sure that you have autonomy given to your management team. You want to make sure that you're evaluating the performance of your junior staff on a regular basis and provide a culture of learning and advancement. When you look at organizations where positions are just stagnant, you know that, okay, once that person is in that role, they're going to be there for the next 5-10 years. That organization has succession planning risk. And if you see the CEO or the head guy or head woman in there is almost pushing 60, 70, but you know when they go is trouble, that company is facing a huge succession planning risk, and that company should have trouble attracting investment from any sophisticated investor. Right. So are you building the right team? So I would have spoken about this before, and I know, and you might hear say this over and over because it's extremely important, right? Your human resources strategy, your succession planning, your skills assessment. Make sure you identify what skills are needed to provide a company. If your company is a very technical based company, let's say your company is doing your companies are you're building apps, or maybe you're a draftsman and you're making custom made things for people, right? You want to make sure that you have those kind of skills on your team and not just in one person, because that one person could get sick. You want to make sure you have one person probably leading, and then maybe people, other options or other alternatives, people that he are training, that he or she is training, that could take over that role. All right. So the other mistake companies make is lack of customer insights. So I spoke earlier about really understanding who your target customer is. And I gave you 3 criteria, right? Who can you create the biggest degree of change for? Who do you like working with? And let me just pause there for a second. How many of you guys out there, the business owners, how many of you are doing a lot of work with customers and you just don't really like working with them that much? They really are a pain. Just say yes in the comments. All right, pain in the comments. No, everybody loves their customer. Okay, Melanie. Okay, Melanie. Anybody else feeling a pain? Is it only Melanie? Some are pain, right, Lyndon? All right. Okay, Dana. Yes. So some customers are real pain, and those customers who are real pain are your least profitable customers, or at least are not necessarily most profitable customers. You want customers who you enjoy working with. People you enjoy working with don't fight everything. They go negotiate prices all the time. They won't ruin a reputation with bad feedback if they have a bad day, right? So I don't want to overemphasize that, but make sure that you enjoy working with your customers. And last but most importantly, those who can afford to pay a premium for your services, because we're small businesses, right? We're not Neil and Massey, we're not Grace Kennedy, and we're not Ansel McCall. We can't play the volume game. We can't play the let's keep reducing costs till more people keep coming to us. We don't. Those economics of demand and supply aren't necessarily in a favor like that. Small businesses, our real advantage, what really keeps customers coming to us is, one, our relationships with the customers, that personal one-to-one relationship, and 2, our uniqueness, what we specialize in, right? So you want to double down in focusing on what you specialize in, because people pay a premium for the specific, right? People pay a premium to solve a specific problem. So you need to understand why your customers choose you. Given all that I've just said, understand why your customers choose you. Again, profile your customers. All right. Right after you identify your ideal customers, you want to be making sure that you're getting feedback from them all the time. Now, depending on your volume of customers, you may be able to just call them on the phone, send them a quick email, say, okay, hey George, how did you feel about your last service? How was that? But as you go ahead and scale, you want to make this a little bit more technological. You want to make this more systemized. So you want to be able to collect feedback in a large scale manner. So a very simple solution is a Facebook group, right? Your Facebook page, sorry. Make sure you have those 5-star ratings going on. Read what your customers are saying about you. Bonus points if you could get testimonies that you could show the bank, because the customers are where you get your revenues, right? And without the revenues, I mean, you don't really have a business. You don't really have proof of concept. All right. So lack of differentiation. So go ahead.
Yes. So the lack of differentiation, this is another one of the big mistakes that we have seen with our clients, right? What it really boils down to was that the owners weren't able to very clearly and crisply articulate how their service or product is unique from their competitors, right? And when you drill down one layer deeper, it separates out into two different things, right? On one side, you have your product, your service, right? What exactly are you producing or service are you offering? And why are you doing that? And what makes you unique to your competitors, right? And on the other side, who are your competitors, right? So a lot of the times when we're talking to our clients, right, we start the whole research of your competitors by asking 3 questions, and they're very basic questions, right? What does the playing field look like? Who are the key players in your market, right? What are they offering, and how much does it cost, right? And of course, there are a number of other questions we need to ask to get more and more information. But those 3 questions there are a very good starting point. And you can now start to tailor your product or service to kind of carve out a nice space in your market, right? Now, once you look at those 2 things, we found that that's a good way to mitigate against this risk of lack of differentiation or defining your product or service. And once you've defined your product or service very well, it plays perfectly into kind of generating your competitive advantage framework, right? So what your competitive advantage framework really is, we like to call it a fortress, right? What makes your business a fortress? You know, you have your fortress, you have your castle, you dig your moat around your castle, you fill it with water, right? So make sure that other competitors can't really come and compete with you face to face, right? You keep putting things in place to kind of make sure you're always in an advantageous position to your competitors, right? And once again, we kind of look at this from two different sides, right? One side, you have the competitors, you have your customers, sorry. So you have your customers, your product, your service, your market, right? So it's everything we spoke about previously, plus any other thing that kind of creates a barrier to entry. So do you have IP protection? Do you have a special skill set that makes your product kind of stand out to competitors, right? Are you partnered with other people to make your product or service offering just head and shoulders above your competitors, so that even if your competitors try, they just can't compete with you, right? So all these different things are kind of just widening that moat, right? Filling with more and more water to make your product really stand out, right? So that's one side, right? And I think that's the side that a lot of us kind of focus on. But there's another key side to it. It's 100% internal, and it's something that we found that a lot of our clients kind of don't focus on as much as the other, but it's just as important. And that's really around your internal systems, processes, right? How do you manufacture your product or offer your service, right? What's the cost of doing this? What systems and what processes are in place for making these things happen? Or is everything manual, right? And what we found was that the more optimized you are on this side, right, the better you are in terms of your overall margins, because at the end of the day, if it's cheaper to produce your product and your revenue is coming in, your margin is where you really gain, right? And in any time where things may change in the global market, let's say a pandemic or the whole of 2020, basically, you know your unit economics like the back of your hand. So now you are able to now kind of adjust and flex, and you're agile, flexible, and you're more resilient as a business, right? So those 2 things kind of start to create your competitive advantage framework. And these things are by no means static, right? These things are changing on a daily basis, right? Your customers will change, your product or service may change, and your internal systems may change as well, right? And having a very good grasp on these 3 things, we found that clients are able to have more resilient companies. They have fortresses, basically, so they're able to kind of widen that trench between themselves and competitors, and just all in all, just able to have more resilient businesses, right? So that kind of leads us into our next key mistake that we see a lot.
Hold on. Wait. Sorry. Before we continue, I just want to take a temperature check. I see we have a question from a Mr. Anton Roberts. Now, Anton, I don't know if you want to, I can invite you to jump off mute and ask your question, sir.
He may not be able to. He may be muted.
Oh, all right. He may be.
Yeah, type it in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right.
Yeah.
So, I'll read Anton's question. When your company is a sole trader, it's a bit more challenging because if you're not on site, worker pull stones. How can one control that? So I'm assuming that that Anton is speaking about maybe a quarry or construction site or something. So with the pulling of the stones, right?
Oh my God.
So Anton, what I would say for that is, and that's the risk with being a sole trader, right? Especially if you want to talk about a business that you want to be able to pass on going forward, or even if you want to get an investor for, right? And you may not be looking for an investor, which is fine. But what you would need there, Anton, you would need to have somebody that you trust to be on site to manage the team while you're out. What's this? Contour body specialist. Sorry. All right. Okay, the question, I can't see the question anymore. The question has been answered. All right. So yes, you wanna you wanna make sure that you have you wanna delegate somebody that you trust to monitor your workers on site and to be essentially like a floor manager or the foreman or whatever you want to call it, depending on what type of business that you have. That's my take. I don't know if Alicia and Zana have another take.
Yeah, I think one, having somebody that you trust and that you can train up as well. You almost want to create another you as much as possible. And then I think to do that, also having systems in place. So it's a lot easier. There are things we take for granted. So for example, I might know how to, bake a pie, right? I might take it for granted that I actually don't know how to bake a pie, but we'll just use this for the sake of an example. But I might take it for granted that I have to thaw the butter before I put it in the bowl. So even writing down those steps that seem intuitive or basic and common sense to you may not be common sense to everybody. So I don't know your business in depth, but I think having those systems in place, documenting every step so that you can get 5 to 10 U's on the job overseeing things, eventually that will allow you to have a bit more flexibility personally.
Yeah, and if I could just add a little to that as well, right? I think when you're a sole trader, I think from knowing other sole traders, they think that they have to do every single thing. But a lot of the times when they challenge themselves to think, all right, there may be certain tasks that I can delegate out. And even if they're not done, maybe as well as I may do it, they will still get done. And it puts me in a position to focus on other things that are important that I need to do as the sole trader or as the key person of this business. So yeah, that's just a little piece that I would add as well. So
cool. All right. So that shows how crucial this teamwork thing is. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right, Shanice. Yeah. All right. So before we go on, because we're going to continue to get a little bit more in the information and stuff. What's the position for self-employed individuals or sole traders who cannot afford to pay a team?
Can I jump in on this one, Kevin?
Beg your pardon?
Can I jump in on this one?
Sure. What is Zara here?
Zara. Oh.
Zara.
So sorry to be late, everyone. But this is actually something that we've discussed with several of our clients who would be the sole traders, or they are the main one running most of the functions of their business. And they'll say, we can't afford to pay a team. We can't afford to employ people. So sometimes for some people, it depends on the industry you're in. It may be worth taking on interns. People who are willing, now, not only necessarily to be paid solely in experience, and definitely not trying to, take advantage of anyone. But there are some industries where people are really trying to learn. They are trying to learn the trade themselves. And so they're willing to work for a lower wage or willing to actually volunteer their time so that they can understand the business. And so in that way, sometimes that can be a fruitful sort of mentor relationship. And also it helps you to be able to teach. What we found is that some clients appreciate then being able to figure out how to teach something to someone else, because in so doing, they actually have to clarify it for themselves a bit better. The other that we found could work for some companies, depending on the functions that you want to use people for, it could be using, for example, digital tools. So for some businesses, they can use, for example, virtual assistants and other types of tools that are available through the internet, available online for a much lower cost than it would than employing a full-time person, but they would still be able to perform some of the functions for you, which can take some time, free up some of your time. And as you know, especially if you are a sole trader, your time is extremely valuable. So if you can get someone to do, for example, some of the admin tasks for your business, and they're doing it at the fraction of the cost of what your time value for money is, then it can actually be worth that. And I think that those are some of the tools that we've discussed with some of our clients that are sole traders, is maybe sometimes getting a bit creative with how you're using either digital tools or unconventional working arrangements, but all still within the law, to be able to perform some of the functions under your company and start training up people in maybe not the entire function, but maybe one or two tasks that can free up your time.
And Jonica, I'll add one more thing: partnerships, right? And I mean, and Zenon spoke about it during the competitive advantage metric module, but it's always to remember that somebody woke up with exactly what you need to solve your problem. And you're sitting right there with something that somebody else needs to solve your problem. So always be open to strategic partnerships, especially as a sole trader, especially as an entrepreneur trying to run a lean business. By lean, I mean cost effective. And yeah. All right. So I interrupted Alicia for long enough. Alicia, you wanted to talk about not monitoring financial performance.
Yes. So, that was a great conversation though, because I think it's very important and almost feeds into this to a large extent, in that a mistake that we see a lot of younger businesses make is they're just, you're focused rightfully on running your business, making sales, but you're not necessarily monitoring your numbers. And what do I mean by numbers? So in other words, you should know ideally what your cash position is. How much cash do you have in the bank? How much cash do you have in the register on a daily basis? You should know, okay, this is what I owe and this is what is owed to me. Of course, it depends on the nature of your business. So if you're in the service industry, let's say you're a consultant or an accountant, you may have receivables at the end of a job. Whereas if you're in the retail sector, you may be operating on a more cash basis, but you may have payables to some of your suppliers. And it's important to know on a daily basis where all of that stands, so that you can meet your payables and your expenses as they come due. Now, a story I could think of there is, I have a friend who has a consulting business, and he had 2 to 3 months of runway when COVID hit. So he could have paid salaries for 2 to 3 months without collecting on the receivables from his clients. Now, had he not known that, he would not have been able to take action to correct it. On the other hand, there are a lot of folks that I know of who, because COVID hit, and whether it's COVID or a recession, folks go through down cycles. So for some, all of a sudden, your big clients are not paying their receivables on time. And you didn't know that you only had 1 month of runway in the bank. So all of a sudden, comes the 30th or 31st of the month, you couldn't pay salaries. And you had to have that awkward conversation with your staff, or maybe you couldn't pay rent and you all of a sudden had to close up shop. So it seems like something that could be left alone and kind of run on its own. But if you're not monitoring it and tracking your numbers, you're not able to respond or prepare for situations that you may not want to think could happen. So that's it. On a daily basis, it's to ask yourself, do you know your numbers? Even on a personal level, do I know how much cash I have in the bank? I hope I do. So that's something we just, we always need to be in control of. And of course, that comes down to the frequency, controls the frequency of financial reporting. Now, while you need to know these numbers on a daily basis, it's important to look at it quarterly or and annually, and ideally even monthly and daily, but at least have reporting done in a particular frequency so you could see over time. I really don't make that much money in the summer months or the summer in Trinidad, let's say July to August. I don't make that much money because my business is such that my customers are flying out of the country during those months. The school's closed, but I make a ton of money at Christmas. So then I can spend accordingly and manage my expenses to know that I can see the trends that are coming out of that. And of course, your financial statements, prepared financial statements reflect those numbers on a larger scale. So you're able to say, okay, I know what my assets and liabilities are. I know how much I owed this year versus last year, etc. So getting a big picture of all of this is critical in terms of managing your business.
And so we listen to Alicia talk about, knowing your numbers and preparing your financial statements and everything. And some of you might be wondering, okay, but all right, so, okay, if I know how much money in the bank, what I have to do with the investor giving me money? What I have to do with that? Was the relationship there? Well, what are you going to show the investors if you don't know your numbers, right? Are you going to tell them, well, the size of this market is $10 billion and we just need 1%. So 1% of that is X $million and we should be fine. Easy. No, right? So what you really need to be able to, what investors really bank on is your credibility, right? And to have that credibility, you need to again have those systems in place, those controls in place where you're monitoring numbers on a regular basis. But from that, because investors are looking at your long-term growth story, right? They want to know how you're going to perform next year and the year after that. They want to see that they could give you this money and they could, ideally, investors like to double their money in over 4 to 5 years, right? That's like the benchmark return that private equity funds look at, right? They want to double their money over 4 to 5 years. So that works out to be between 20 to 25% annualized return per year. So you don't want to show them projections that look like this. Meanwhile, your business has been chugging along like this, because then again, that attacks your credibility. So when it comes to doing your financial forecast, you always want to, one, back up your assumptions with credible research or credible trends in your business. And two, it's always best to underpromise and over-deliver versus over-promising and luck by, right? So another thing that investors look at when it comes to evaluating a company for investment, do you have any skin in the game? So how much of your own money or your own capital have you put at risk? A lot of companies come in and say, well, hey, what, you give me $1 million. We brought the idea, we brought the sweat. We've been working on this for 2 years. How much money have you put in? $10, not much. $10, $1,000, maybe $10,000, but we want $1 million. And we'll give you 5% for that $1 million. See, it doesn't work like that, right? Investors need to know that the risks are aligned. If their money goes to zero, because your investment goes to zero as well. Also, all right, so this kind of flip from investors in terms of buying shares in a company to financial institutions lending to you, or anybody lending to you, any institution lending to you. Do you have any hard assets that you could put up as collateral? So Anton spoke about being on site and somebody pulling stones, and we assume that he's talking about a construction business or a quarry or so, right? So a quarry operates as a hard asset, right? If you're looking for funding to expand this quarry, Anton, or or your construction business, do you have anything you could put up as collateral? Do you have any property, any sort of equipment, maybe some backhoes or what have you, that the bank could say, okay, if Anton is not able to service this loan, then you'll be able to at least get 50% of the market value of this backhoe, right? So all of this prepares you to face investors. Everything we spoke about before, it results in the presentation you make to investors. Your financial statements, your projections, your skin in the game, collateral, everything I just spoke about. All right. So you all want to take a question before you go to mistake number 7, or you want to just go? Just type just go if you just want to go. Let's go. All right, Anisha. Go. All right. All right, Alicia. So explain to them why they don't want to not CYA.
So CYA is a it's a term I think we may know, and it means the mistake is not covering your assets, right? And essentially what we're talking about here is protecting your business, and sometimes from yourself. What I mean by that is having agreements in place from day one amongst your team members. So we spoke, let's say you go through all of the 6 steps we mentioned before. You have a great team, you know your why, you have all the skills and the culture in place and established, and you understand your competitive advantage, you're ready to go. So you roll up your sleeves with your team and you hit the road. Now, nobody has understood at this point what they're getting out of the business. Let's assume it's a team of 5 or 6, and all of the team members are putting in what they think they should be putting in. But I don't know what John is supposed to be getting for his hours of input, what I'm supposed to be getting for my financial contribution. And, and that could end up in a lot of legal and financial issues that could actually prove terminal. I could give you a story to make it a bit more realistic. It's a group of 5 people that started a business, let's say in the restaurant business. They all went to Nepal and decided they want to bring this food back to Trinidad. So one of them is a chef, so he's doing the cooking and he's in the kitchen every day. Another one is really good at business, so he's running the numbers. Another one is put money in, so you have the skills, the money, and then the business. Let's say, what did I say the third skill was? Yeah, all the necessary skills are there amongst all of them. And maybe 2 have said, okay, I'm just here for support because I like the idea. And they're all owners, so they think they're owners, right? Then 5 years later, this business is starting to make money. Everybody has agreed they're putting the money back into the business to build the business. But now the business is making $5 million a year. You have 5 owners. So all 5 of them are taking $1 million out of the business. Now, John, the chef, is thinking, I've cooked every night for 5 years. I haven't taken a salary. Given up my life for this, while my friend is still in Nepal enjoying whatever. Another one is in Barbados on the beach chilling, collecting $1 million a year because he is a 1/5 owner of a $5 million business. But the fact is, no agreements were executed. So the shareholders don't know who has a right to what. John has no case to say, well, I should be getting salary because I'm cooking, or I should be getting more of the profit because I'm putting in more sweat. None of this was agreed to. So that's where it's very easy for them to end up in court, and not only to incur legal and financial, like the expenses associated with that, but the business is now shut down because nobody's really willing to kind of take the hit there, if you will, or compromise. So this is where the importance of agreements, having common understanding early on, is very critical. I don't know if that story was clear, but feel free to ask questions because it could be a very overly technical topic. Yes, you can move on. Yeah. So really we want to ask is, what we're asking is, how strong not is your company's management in terms of skill set, but how strong are you protecting your company? not only from the shareholders, but from management, from board, everybody. Is the company as a whole being protected totally? So this is what I covered here, understanding the roles and responsibilities of all of the team members. Is the chef responsible for cooking on a, every day? Probably. Is the person who is, bringing legal skill set responsible for that? Probably. But then how are they being compensated for all of this? So it's really kind of understanding that. That shareholders agreement is what would come into play when we understand that, okay, as a shareholder, you're entitled to a payout based on your sweat or based on your financial contribution or some combination of both. But having clarity there is critical to avoid those types of issues. And of course, conflict of interest. Now, perhaps our person who is sitting in Barbados is also invested in some other restaurant. So he may not really, he may decide to dedicate his time elsewhere, or he may be getting a financial gain that is, counterproductive to the business that we're talking about. It doesn't mean that he can't take part in the business, but it means that he does need to declare it so that perhaps he should be excluded from certain decisions. Perhaps they want to expand into a market where his competing business exists, and he says no, because he wants to keep that business growing. So it's really understanding where your conflicts of interest exist.
There's so many small businesses out here in how do I go back? All right, there's so many small businesses out here in Trinidad and Tobago that think they have shares issued that do not have shares issued. That there are many individuals in Trinidad today that think they own shares in a company, but are not shareholders in a company. They might just be directors. The reason for this, and somebody in the chat mentioned business registration earlier. When you go to the Ministry of Legal, when you go to the Ministry of Legal Affairs to register your business, they ask you for a list of directors and their addresses. Never do they ask you who will be the shareholders of this business. How much money are you putting into the business? When you go to the bank to open a bank account for the business, they ask who are the directors, who are the signatories. They don't ask who are the shareholders. They ask who could sign for this amount, what's this resolution here, but they don't ask for shareholders agreement. And as a knee-jerk reaction, we just don't create shareholders agreements. How many of you here have shares in a company but don't actually have a shareholders agreement executed? Just say yes. Except for Jonica, because Jonica clearly has all the agreements you need in place. Yeah, it's not comfortable thing to admit. I know. All right. This is why a shareholders agreement is critical, especially if you want to get an investor interested. And imagine an investor walks in, he says, okay, I'm considering investing in your company. Let me see your shareholders agreement. Excuse me, sir, what did you say? Your what? My what agreement? Well, I mean, we're directors here. We all put in this amount of money. Okay, but how many shares do you have? Can I see your shareholder certificates? Oh, awkward moment. All right, so to avoid awkward moment, you want to connect with people like Jonica or any other folks who provide legal services and shareholder agreements, but you definitely want to have that shareholder agreement in place, not only for attracting investors, but also for the longevity of your business.
Yeah, and I would add, because even, it may seem intimidating to think you have to pay somebody to put together a legal document, but even having something in writing that says, okay, you will get 25% of the company for putting 25% of the cost in, meaning you have access to 25% of the profits, then, even just having that in writing is a good first step until you can afford to retain legal services or services from folks like Jonica. Although I'm sure she'll work something out, but but it's important to at least get it in writing and have that understanding.
Yeah. All right. So before we move on to the next, So before we move on to the next slide, we have a question from our friend Anton Roberts. He's asking, is it wise for a company to have accounts in different banks, and why?
I mean, I think it depends on what the reason is behind that. So as we know, the banks in Trinidad operate very differently depending on who you go to. There are certain banks that may be more flexible with terms if you're looking for a loan. And there are other banks that may also just be far better with online banking. Something as simple as that, we've learned from personal experience, could be critical. So it's really kind of selecting the bank that suits your needs. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple bank accounts in that respect. Of course, it could be an administrative nightmare if you have like 10 different bank accounts you have to manage, but it's there's nothing wrong with it.
So Alicia, Jonica just made the point that from her experience, she realizes that a lot of people do not understand the difference between a shareholder and a director. True. And if you could just explain the difference.
Yes. So a shareholder is the owner of the business, right? So that person has a right to the profits of the business potentially. They also have a right to potentially, it all depends on the agreement. There's not a birthright, right? But essentially a shareholder may be able to vote on certain things in the business. So the shareholder is the owner. You may get that ownership because you put in sweat or because you put in money, or maybe you inherited it. But essentially, there's something that you get, you give on in exchange for that share in the business. On the other side, the directors are responsible for, as the name almost implies, directing and guiding the business. So what is approving the strategy of the business? How are we going to execute on our mission? That's what the directors are there to do. So it's two very different groups. And you could almost look at it as the directors work for the shareholders. The shareholders can fire and hire directors. So that's a big difference between the two.
All right. So now Zara is going to tell us how to build an investable business.
Thanks, Kevin. So I know that we have covered a lot of material so far. And so, of course, as you come up with questions, as things come to you, definitely please let us know. Drop it in the chat. You can always contact us afterwards. We will give you that information at the end. But we want to kind of move from thinking about the mistakes that business owners make, how to address those mistakes, to really how can you focus on building that business and building an investable business, and how can you tell if your business is investable or not. And so as we're about to get into the assessment aspect of how you can actually gauge investability and then determine how you can build and improve certain aspects, we just wanted to focus really on what BI, on what Become Investable has identified as the fundamentals. And these would be our 6 key metrics that we use when assessing a company, when assessing a business, and understanding that these 6 elements of the business, regardless of the size of the business, are important, and if they are paid attention to, can really change the ability of the company to effectively grow and effectively scale. So we've covered all of these already, but we're just going to recap them. And if there's only one thing that you remember from each of them, look at these questions, because the questions will guide you. There's also a mnemonic device, which Kevin may teach you later, that might help you remember some of the metrics, but the key things really are the questions. So we're starting with human resources because people are the backbone of your business. And the main question there is, are you building the right team? The secondary question is, how do you do that? And so Kevin has just dropped the mnemonic device in the chat. It's happy customers, champion and favor fantastic companies. Human resources, customer insights, competitive advantage, financial controls, financial data, and corporate governance. So you start with the people, with human resources. And even if you're a sole trader, you may not think that you have to think about HR because, well, it's just me, or it's just me and one partner. So why am I caring about HR? And the reason is because you need to understand what are the skills needed to run your business effectively. And if you want to scale your business, what do you need on your team, or even a team of partners because partnerships, as we had discussed, are also an important tool to be able to make that happen. So that's really where you start thinking about, am I building the right team? And also start thinking about how you can change if you aren't building the right team. So I spoke to someone recently, just yesterday, and they were talking to me about a new product they're putting out in their business, but they were really, really stressed because they realized that the persons that they had started as employees when the company started weren't really the ones they needed to take the company to the next level. And so they were wondering, well, how are we going to close that gap? Sometimes that means you have to make a hard decision. Other times that can be fixed by determining what that skill set or the gap is that's missing and applying, whether it's training, whether it is determining how to empower the individual or the team members to reach that goal, to reach that potential and be able to perform that function well. So that first part's important. Who's on your team? Are you building the right team? How are you doing that? And how are you assessing it as well? Because it's important that just because you hire somebody to do something, that you don't just assume that that's the person who's going to be doing it forever. That person may also have aspirations of growth. That person may have interest in other parts of the company. Be in constant contact as well with your team, with your employees. Don't lose touch with them, because that's an easy way for things to fall through the cracks. So just as important as the people inside the company are the people who are buying from your business. Your customers are key. If no one is buying your product or service, your business is going to fail. So think about here, the key question to remember is, why do your customers choose you? What is it about what you're offering that makes that different than the person next door? I might be, for example, selling sandwiches, but maybe it is that I focus on making sure that I only use high quality ingredients in my bread. So my bread tastes different. Even though the person next door has the exact same sandwich, they don't have the same ingredients. So that's what sets me apart. But also, I have surveyed my customers to see what they care most about. And they're willing to pay more to maintain the quality of the ingredients. So because of that, I know that I can raise my prices a little bit if I have to, but my customers will keep coming to me because they're coming to me for a very specific quality and a very specific taste. So that's something to think about. And one way to know why your customers are choosing you is to always keep talking to them. Consistently talk to your customers, get the feedback, do the surveys, engage in conversations, give them a call after you've delivered the service, or when you know they've had an interaction, some kind of touch point with the company. Get to know them well and make that relationship strong. The second C is competitive advantage. So that's where you're really thinking about what makes your business a fortress. It's related very much to having the customer insights, but it's different. It is that thing which is placing you heads and shoulders either above your competitors or differentiating you from them enough that you're able to maintain your segment of the market and your understanding of why your target customers are choosing you and why your target customers find that you, most importantly, are solving their problem the most effectively. Because in the end, businesses, whether it's a service or a product, solve problems. So if you're solving that problem most effectively and most innovatively, then you're most likely to be able to maintain some distance and maintain that moat around your business from your competitors. So then we're getting into finances, both financial controls and financial data. They work hand in hand. You not only have to know your numbers, you also have to have those numbers recorded well. You have to make sure that you have someone who is very well acquainted with your business, if not an employee, preparing your financials and understanding every single detail of them. As an owner, even if you hate numbers, because we have encountered this on many occasions, we have the assessment and we're going through all of the aspects and everything is fine, and then we get to finances. So, do you have a financial statement prepared? I'm not sure. Who's preparing your financial statements? Well, I give it to this accountant and then I send them all my bills and they send me back the statements. That is, for many investors, a red flag. Even if you're not someone who has that numbers acumen, if you're not a numbers person, even if you hate Excel and you think it's the devil, you really should figure out a way to make the numbers comprehensible to you. You don't have to prepare every single piece of the statement, but you have to understand exactly what the statement is saying. Because when you're in an investor meeting, you need to be able to inspire confidence in your numbers. You need to be able to inspire confidence in your ability to manage your financial performance and utilize the information from your financial performance to determine what's the best strategy going forward. So that's your financial controls and financial data. Those things play together, and that financial strength is very important. The last, which Alicia would have explained very well, is really looking at your corporate governance. This is not only looking at how strong your company's management is, but also the structures which are governing, for example, the board of directors, the structures which are governing the shareholders. All of these aspects are very important, and they're incredibly important, as Kevin would have explained, for the investors. Because if you don't understand how your company is being run and who owns different parts, no investor is going to give you money, because that is a huge risk for them. And in the end, one of the main aspects of investment is risk mitigation and risk management. You want to make sure that you can confidently express to your investors. And remember, your investors don't necessarily have to be external investors. It doesn't have to be the bank. Sometimes your investors, you are your first investor usually, and then your friends and family are usually also your investors. So in terms of the first and second tiers. So how are you making sure that you have confidence that you're not going to take too big of a risk and lose all of the investment? And part of that risk management and risk mitigation is really focusing on these fundamentals and making sure that you have an eye on them all the time, which can seem like a lot of work, but trust us, it is worth it, because if you take your eye off of these, you'd be surprised how much work you have to make up in the end. And sometimes you really can't close the gap.
But it's not that much work, you know, and so it's not that much work. And the reason it's not that much work is because the Become Investible team have put in all the work. You know, so we spent the past, we don't really want to disclose how long we spent on it. Let's just say we spent a long time, a lot of meetings, long 3-4 hour meetings, putting together a product, a software, which evaluates a company's investability based on these 6 metrics, which you're going to test you on very shortly. And we call this product the Roundtable platform. Why? It's around the roundtable that deals are made. You know, it's where the business owner, the investor, the advisor sits around the round table where we make a transaction happen.
Hello.
Okay.
So
we're about to give you a quick demonstration of how the roundtable works, the different metrics it evaluates. Hint, there's going to be a test on the metrics. I put it in the chat. I said it just now. I said it again. There's going to be a test. All right. So don't be surprised. Oh, Kevin didn't tell us there'll be a test. There'll be a test. So there's a short video here that we're going to play with. It's going to walk you through our roundtable platform.
this is the welcome page, as you will see when you enter your login information for the Become Investible Roundtable assessment. Now, before you get to your assessment, you would complete your business profile, which essentially is an in-depth description of your business, including what industries you cover, how long you've been in business, and what problem you're trying to solve, and a lot of other questions around that allow us to get a sense of what your business is and what you do. Company information is primarily contact information, so that's a very brief section. The meat of this is the roundtable assessment. So this is where you would complete information around the different metrics that are being measured. So the first metric that we could go into is competitive advantage. Now, any of these metrics can be completed in any different order. So there's no particular order that you need to complete this in. The competitive advantage measures what your edge is essentially against your competitors, or I should say we take information around that. So, a question might be, as you can see, what makes you different from your competitors? Why should people purchase your product or service? And so those are what we're trying to get a sense of there is what your edge is against your competitors. Customer intelligence really is giving us a sense of your understanding of your customer and why your customers patronize you. So, for example, a question might be, have you created a customer profile for your ideal customer? Now, in this case, the answer to the previous question was that the target customers are individuals and businesses. So questions around that would be asked to get a better sense of who the customers are. Financial controls looks at how closely you measure your financial position on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. So do you know, for example, do you know how much cash you have available to cover expenses at any given time? Do you monitor account receivables and payables on a daily basis? So these are yes or no questions, and they will contribute to your score in this metric. We also measure corporate governance, in which we ask questions such as, do you have a shareholders agreement? Do you monitor the financial interests and conflicts of interest of your directors and executive management? Human resources measures or asks questions around how your human resource strategy, so your hiring practices and your ability, or I shouldn't say ability, your frequency with which you assess your team. And lastly, financial data is the section in which we look at whether or not you compile financial data, both historically and going forward. So once this is complete, you would then be able to look at your dashboard. And in this case, because it's complete, we can jump to the dashboard. And here you can see that, you get scores based on the different metrics. So in this case, financial data was the weakest metric and financial controls was actually the strongest metric. You are then able to see your gaps in the different metrics and where you can improve or where you've been doing well. So that summarizes essentially the Become Investable dashboard. So thank you very much.
And thank you. All right. So that roundtable platform would start a working relationship between us and whoever would like to really dig deep into how investable their business is. We'll run you through that platform. You will get those gaps there. Those gaps will be expanded, and we'll also prepare a report for you, providing an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of your business. And from there, we can begin to take a roadmap to investability, as Anna's about to describe.
Right. So basically, becoming investable is actually a journey. It's a process, right? It's a road, basically, right? So it's basic for us. It's basically a 3-step process, right? Before you become investable, right? So the first one is assess. So using the roundtable platform that you would have just seen, we'll sit down with clients and actually go through the roundtable platform, right? Assess where you are right now, day one, right? And from there, we'll get an idea of where the gaps and what are the strengths, and also we get to order them in terms of priorities, right? Because any company now is starting up, chances are they're strapped for resources, strapped for capital, right? So you don't just want to go and be just fixing problems, just fix any other problem that you can find, right? You really want to take a systematic approach to doing things, right? And that's exactly what the roadmap does for you, and the document that we provide post roundtable platform that Kevin would have just described, right? So with that document now, and sitting down with the Become Investable team, we now come up with a strategy. How are we going to attack this, right? To basically address these gaps. What gaps need to be addressed urgently? Are there any low-hanging fruit? How can we get this done as efficiently as possible to get you to the end, which is to become investable, right? Whether that means you're ready to start looking for growth capital, that's fine. We can also do that as well. And all that means you just have a very well-run, efficient company, right? That you're ready to look for investment whenever you are ready to do that, right? you are investable, right? So that's basically roadmap to investability that we have put together. This three-prong approach, so it's assess, analyze, strategize, and then become investable.
All right. So that lends nicely into our advisory services. So I see, there are plugs going on in the chat, so we're going to put a plug on the screen. So our advisory services, so after we get you investable, that's where, the left and top of this circle kind of comes into place. So you're looking for investment, you're looking to raise capital. All right. What percentage of my company should I give up for this amount of money? That's where business valuation comes into play. So as Stefan would have mentioned at the beginning of this call, I'm a chartered business valuator. So I will be able to help you. I'll be able to help you, really fairly assess what is the fair market value of your company and what is a fair price to raise capital at, or what is a fair percentage to offer to investors for a specific capital need. We can provide you with a detailed financial analysis that will complement your business plan that was mentioned earlier. We can review your business plan, or we can help you prepare a pitch deck to approach investors. And all of that could turn into a bigger investment proposal. And for companies that are already investable also, we will connect you to our existing network of investors to really help you get unstrapped. Because then I mentioned that, you may be strapped for capital right now. You might be bootstrapped. You're really trying to, out your pocket, you're going from month to month, you're struggling. Well, we could help you get unstrapped, feel at ease, get the capital you need to grow and scale your business, get that, that growth and that relief, right? So on the right-hand side, if you're not investable as yet, then that's where we get some business coaching in place, right? So we would have identified some gaps based on our roundtable investability diagnostic. So you may have accounting and financial governance gaps that speaks to financial data and financial controls metrics. Or if your gaps are, you just don't have the right team, you don't have proper systems, your succession planning is a humongous risk for you. Or if you don't have proper corporate governance in place, you're still not sure what a shareholder is versus a director, or you just don't have those documents in place, and you want to be able to protect your company from yourself. That's what corporate governance is all about: protecting your company and your company shareholders from your management, from your board. So we have corporate governance specialists on call for that as well. So here comes Zara for the recap.
Great, thanks, Kevin. So before we recap and wrap up, we just wanted to answer Shanice's question. So the question was, can the platform be used to get a report to go to other investors other than us? Well, just to clarify first, we don't invest. We are not investors, but we will prepare you to face investors. And one thing as well, which the report can do. So the report is yours. If you choose to take that with you to have a discussion with either another professional, or if you want to take that report with you to help you when you go to investors, it is a tool which you can use as part of a larger package. We would recommend using it for your own edification and to help you guide some of the next steps in terms of growth that you may need to take as a business and as a company. Because what the report will really do, and you saw a little bit of it at the end of the video, is that it will give you a score on each of your metrics, but it will also identify for you the gaps. So if you may be particularly strong on one metric, let's say, for example, your customer insights are incredibly strong, as we see with a lot of businesses. They are really in touch with their customers. But similarly, as we also see with a lot of businesses, either their corporate governance structure or perhaps their financial control structure needs work. Then those are areas where before you actually approach the investor, it may be useful to either become investable for our advisory services, or to identify other gaps that perhaps either through the Become Investable network or other professionals can help you to address that before you go to the investor. Because really, once you are able to do that, then you are more investor ready. I hope that makes sense. If you have a follow-up, please let us know. So,
Zara, before we go to the recap, is it okay if I just do the test right now? Let's do
sure,
the test.
let's quiz people. Make
Right,
sure
'cause
they're paying attention.
yeah, it's a learning session. It's a learning session, right? All right. Whoever could identify the 6 metrics that we spoke about is going to get a free strategy call with the Become Investible team. Right? That's a free strategy call on your business. Talk about your business. Anything you want about your business. No, all 6, Jonica.
All 6 in
all
one
6,
hand.
Jonica.
going already.
Yeah, all 6. All right. Okay. All right. Get it. Jonica.
You
You're
guys might
gonna
want to jump in.
Yeah. And I mean, feel free to put it all in one message, because then it's like a
Yeah,
big
just
sea of messages.
type it all together in one list if you can.
Yeah. Commas is fine and everything.
Trying to get all 6. So whoever can give us all 6 first.
Boom. Shanice gone.
Ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. All right. Congratulations, Shanice.
Wow. And Shanice knows it as well. She says she is on fire.
Yes. She's on fire. She didn't even need my mnemonic.
No, she did not
That
need
was too basic.
No, all right, great. So,
Shanice,
Love it.
Shanice put them in order as well,
Yeah. And he's saying, what? I
Check
think Shanice, did you take a screenshot? Anyway, whatever it takes to win. Once you learn, that's what's important.
So we will have, of course, our contact details at the end. Of the presentation.
Stefan, Elena, just make sure and get Shanice's info so we could connect with her afterwards. All right. So Zara, please recap.
Sure. So we know we've been talking for a long time. So we've done a lot of talking, and hopefully you have learned something new. But we just want to hammer home a few points. And these are things which we have discussed ad nauseum with all of our clients, and in our own individual previous business lives with our clients and our teams. So the key thing, one of the key things that we want to cover, so we want to cover what business owners should know and why you should become investable. So business owners, if you're really serious about your business, especially when it comes to growth and scalability and sustainability of your business, they need to focus on these 4 things. We've said them before, we will say them again because you can't see them too much. Business owners must know their numbers inside out. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. You must understand your customers, both their feedback as well as what motivates them, why they're accessing your product or service, and what they are really looking for. What's the problem they're trying to solve? Because if you can understand your customer's pain and your customer's problems, you can always figure out a way to make it feel as though what you have was created just for them. And that will always keep you with steady business. So the third thing, and this is something that we speak about a lot, and this was one of the reasons we created the Roundtable platform. This is one of the reasons that we created Become Investible, is because a lot of businesses don't have processes and systems in place. If you want to scale, you need to have processes and systems in place. It is almost impossible to scale, for example, a home manufacturing business to a factory scale manufacturing business if you don't have those very detailed steps of every single step that goes into the process of creating your product. If you're delivering a service and you're trying to train someone to take your place, you have to understand very carefully what the process is that you go through with the customer and what makes that process so special, what creates that process for you. I'm sure that everybody off the top of their head can think of a really exceptional customer experience that they may have had at some point in their lives. That was not an accident. That was created by design to make you feel as though it was as intuitive and as easy as possible. It is because that ease and that intuition makes you feel like this company is not just a company, this company gets me. And being able to systemize that and being able to replicate it is what will allow you to grow and scale your business. The last thing that all business owners need to keep an eye on and barriers to entry for competitors. You need to understand what's keeping somebody else from doing what you're doing. Is it the people in the company? Is it the specific skills that they hold? Is it their particular methodology? There are some industries, for example, that have heavy regulatory barriers. So you know that if you're able to access a license or you're able to access a certain space to operate, that it's not so easy for others to do so. But just because you identify the barriers doesn't mean you can be complacent. You also have to keep a consistent eye on how your competitors are innovating and changing to be able to change for the market and change for the customers. So you'll notice that all of these key aspects are linked. Everything has to work together. And when they work together, it really runs very smoothly. And the last thing we wanted to focus on and remind you of are the risks of not focusing on investability. So some people and some businesses don't want to scale, and that's fine. You can maintain a smaller business, but still maintain strong practices within that business and still maintain a stronger business because of it. The risks of not focusing on investability are that you don't understand your own weaknesses. When you don't understand the weaknesses of the company, you can often spend money in the wrong places. We see this a lot, for example, when it comes to marketing. So that because a company may not understand why their customers are leaving, because they're not tapping into that customer feedback and customer insights, just an example, then they may instead throw money at advertising to those same customers, when if they were to do their research and really understand their customers, they would realize that that is not their target demographic. Their target demographic is not accessing the type of marketing that they're putting out, and it is essentially a waste of money. So if you want to use your resources wisely, you really have to understand where your weaknesses are, so that if, for example, you need to add a member of staff, you can do that rather than spending more money opening a second location. Optimize in different ways. Without focusing on investability, your business growth can easily be stunted. You can have a business that is easily dismantled in that one challenge or one crisis, one recession, one bad quarter can take your business down. But to make your business more resilient, more sustainable, if you have these systems in place, it's easier to weather a storm. Not without taking any hits, but at least you can take the hits and get back up. You don't have to fold. And the last thing, which some people are more interested in than others, is that as the word would suggest, if you don't have an investable business, investors aren't going to be interested in your business. They're going to see all of the red flags and move on to another candidate. So what we are driven by and what really is one of our whys is teaching businesses how to identify those red flags and how to address them before they go before the investors, to make it more likely that they're able to secure that investment. So just one more time for the people in the back, an investable business will be more attractive to external investors. But in order to do that, it must have the systems and processes in place for effective growth. But the real reason why this is important to a lot of people, and this is particularly for smaller businesses, this is particularly for people who are, for example, serial entrepreneurs and want to start several companies, is that having these systems and processes in place to create an investable business allows you to spend your time and money more efficiently, and most importantly, gives you the freedom to enjoy life and focus on strategic decisions within your company. When you're not focusing on the day-to-day, where do these papers printed, you can focus on the higher level and determine, okay, what do we want to do next year? What are we thinking about? What's the vision? Where do we want to take this company? How are we going to double our business, grow our customers, expand to a different country? But if your head is consistently down, only focusing on what's happening right in front of you, you're not going to be able to see the field. So those are the things to remember. I think we've spoken about them a million times at this point in time, so hopefully you'll remember us for it. But if you want to follow up with us, if you want to reach out to do the assessment, which is available through our website, or you want to follow up with us on any of the Become Investible advisory services, our website is noted here, becomeinvestible.com, and you can reach any of us at our email addresses here. I am one of the directors in charge of client relations, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I will share with the team. So I think we are now ready to take any of your final questions. That's all for our presentation for this evening. Thank you so much for being such an attentive and engaged audience.
Yes, we definitely want to thank Stefan, Elena, and of course the ECU team, Eastern Credit Union team, for facilitating this. I see Stefan is asking, would this presentation be made available to us? Stefan, we'll send you an invoice. All right, yes, it's fine, that's fine. You'll get it. You'll get it. Just because it's you, Stefan, we'll make it available. And you know, we have the recording already, but okay, I see some faces from my team. But do we have any questions? that, do you have any? Where's that?
No, I'm just saying the presentation will also be up on our website eventually as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. It will be on our website for sure. Okay, so do you have any questions from the audience? Anybody wants to workshop some things that are going on in the business? Any metrics kind of hit home for anybody? Now is the time. Or if you want, here's what we can do. Just type question in the chat. We'll ask Stefan and Elena to please take you off of mute so you can talk about your business, talk about your, ask your question, and we will see how we can help. Come on, folks, ask your questions while we have these guys here. Yeah, just type question in the chat and let Elena take you off mute. Okay, no questions, no problem. Let me tell the web source they could come in.
We were very thorough.
Oh, hold on, there are some questions.
We have a question. Two questions.
Okay.
Nice.
All right, Kester Elliott, do you guys start evaluations from scratch or prefer a person to come with the metrics that they can do? Zenon.
No. So you come as you are, basically, right? You come. We start from the same point with every client, right? And we'll go through the metrics one by one, question by question. What will be different if you have certain metrics already in place will be a score and your gaps. So the output of the roundtable platform will be different depending on what you have, right? And then based on that, it'll also change how we work together going forward. Obviously, if you have certain strengths, we'll play to those, but if you have certain weaknesses, we'll focus on those when we're putting together a strategy to get you to the end point, right? So basically that's what it is. So everybody starts at the same place, and based on how you answer the questions, you'll get different scores, you'll have different gaps, and that's how we put together a personalized plan to close those gaps and become investable. Hope that answered the question.
Anybody else want to answer question? Kester's question? No? All right, so Kester, I hope that suffices. All right, so Charlene Finlay Stewart asked, how does a service business attract investors? So my counter question to you, Charlene, would be, what are you trying to raise capital for? So, I mean, your service businesses tend to have lower costs, right? They don't need that big, expensive equipment or what have you. They have lower overheads. You might have an office, you might have some staff or whatever, or you might just be rocking it from home. So I will need to know a little bit more about your business, Charlene, before we could give you a proper answer to your question. I wish you could come off mute and we can have a chat on this. Elena, can you come off mute, please? All right, so while we wait to Elaine to let Shani come off mute, Shanice, yes, Shanice, the winner. What are the basic financial statements a business should have? Alicia Cooper, what are the basic financial statements that Shanice should have?
So you definitely want to have an income statement or profit and loss statement, right? To give you a sense of how profitable your business is on a annual or, every quarter or every 6 months at least. You want to be looking at how profitable your business is. Now, I would recommend daily to know that answer. But in terms of those statements that you would take to an investor, you look at that over periods of time. So that's one. The other one is your balance sheet that gives you, essentially, it's a snapshot of your business. So how much, like what do you own and what do you owe? And then what do you essentially, so your assets, your liabilities, your equity. How are you funding those assets in your business? So for example, if you have a lot of property, have you borrowed money to purchase that property, or is that purchased with equity and cash? So that's how those are two main statements that you'd want. And then of course your cash flow statement being your third statement that you would take to an investor. But the first two, your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement, are really the two most critical. So those are the statements that you would need.
Yes.
Alicia. Sorry?
Yes, I think, Alicia, what we should also do is for people who are not that number savvy,
yes,
you can reach out to somebody in your profession, an accountant, to get the information they need and get the guidance.
Correct. Correct. So I know Wayne dropped his card as well, Wayne Diaz, who's an accountant I'm friendly with. I spent some time in Tobago, so I know Wayne. And so he can assist with that. And of course, you can reach out to us as well if you need additional services beyond Wayne as well. So for sure, an accountant, would be the best person to put those statements together, but you still need to have an intimate knowledge of those numbers because your business is really kind of your baby. And so you need to know it inside and out,
All right. Again, Charlene, we'll love to hear more about your business, about your service business, what type of services you offer or whatnot. We would love to be able to come off mute and discuss. All right. So in the meanwhile, Kester Elliott, he asked, do you identify potential investors or do I source those? Yes, Kester, we've built a network of investors both locally and regionally. These are institutional investors, and yes, we work with them to fund investable SMEs that we think have enough of their systems and controls in place and can be an attractive investment for them. So yes, Kester, we do source investments for you. All right. So Tamaria Dillon asks, how do I become investable? Oh, that's easy, Tamaria. You send us an email. It says email zara.allen@becomeinvestable.com. Tell her about your business. We'll schedule a session with you, and we'll take it from there. All right, Krayana, you never told me if I say your name right or wrong, but we're gonna go with it. To become, I'm gonna assume investable. Do I prepare something like an elevator pitch or presentation? If yes, how long it should be? All right, Krayana. So the first thing I would say that yes, I mean eventually you'll have a pitch, but investability is not a pitch. Investability is about, again, like on the slides Zara spoke about, focusing on your fundamentals. It's about those 6 metrics: happy customers, champion and favor fantastic companies, right? Your human resources, your customer insights, your competitive advantage, your financial controls, your financial data, your corporate governance. It's about really having all of those things in place and scoring well on the Roundtable platform, essentially, because the questions on the Roundtable platform are questions that we would ask people sitting as an investor. Alicia and I would have put on investor hats and asked people those kind of questions. And we actually developed that Roundtable platform by saying, okay, what are some of the common mistakes people make when coming to us for investment? And what do we wish existed so that people knew what they were doing wrong? And that's why we build the Roundtable platform. So yes, I would say first you do an investability assessment and then decide if it is that you need to address the gaps in your business. And once those gaps are addressed and you deem your business investable, then we could work with you to put together that pitch and that presentation and everything to really showcase the value of that business, showcase that credible investment proposition. Shanice,
I was going to
Have you
attempt to answer Charlene's question because I suspect you may not be able to come off mute. But,
She's
Yeah,
saying
I
that
know.
she and her
Yeah.
husband build websites. That's
excellent.
the business. That's the service.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
so low overheads. Okay, low overheads. Okay, go ahead, Alicia.
I was going to say essentially, yeah. So it doesn't matter if the business is a service business or product business. All of these metrics still apply. That's actually a question we asked in the roundtable platform: are you providing a product or a service? Because the metrics are applicable regardless. So you still need that strong HR. Now, I would imagine in a system, in a business where you're building websites, you are really the talent in your business. So you'd want to look at getting other team members that have, let's say, the HR skill sets or the financial controls and whatnot in place. So that's where Kevin mentioned strategic partnerships may come into play. So yes, a service business can attract investors in the same way that a product business can, but it's really just identifying, okay, you build websites, how are you doing that differently to other website developers? What's your unique selling point? Do you have when you want to grow your team, how do you want to grow your team? Who do you want to bring on the bus if you're the talent? Are you training other people to come up behind you? So those are the things you still need to look at. And then it's you and your husband, and so that's a family business. So my guess is, I could be very wrong, you may not have a shareholders agreement in place, right? You may be using your marriage as a shareholders agreement, but I would get that agreement in place and kind of articulate, okay, hubby is doing this, I am doing this, and this is how our ownership is articulated. And we may both be directors, and we may have a sister or brother that's a director as well. But how are we monitoring the directors? Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent, Charlene. You are way ahead of the game. Most family businesses do not have agreements in place. So I'm very happy to see that. So that's excellent. So once you have those, you're on your way, definitely more so than a lot of people, to becoming investable, regardless of whether or not it's a service business. So excellent, excellent. I don't know if anybody else had anything to add there.
No, you're good there. Alyssa has another question for you, Alicia. Organizing my financial statement is a huge problem. I simply don't have the time. Tell me about it. What is the best way to organize my financial statements?
Well, my first comment would be, find the time to know your numbers. It's not negotiable. However, you may not have the time or the background to organize your statements. So that's where I would reach out to folks like Wayne or other accounting professionals. Become Investible can help you if you identify any other gaps you have, of course, but that's where I would look for those other partnerships. But I would still, even if you don't have the time to sit down and prepare profit and loss statement or a balance sheet, know those critical numbers still. Not having the time. I know things are tight, especially given last year. We're all focusing on building a business, but those numbers are really a non-negotiable as it pertains to keeping your business alive. Because you don't want to have too much time because you don't have a business, So find the time.
Okay, so in the chat, Nicole F said, is a landscaping business a good investment in your opinion? Now, Nicole, we'll need a little bit more from you before we can deem that. It depends. It depends on are there other landscaping businesses in your area? Or are there other companies providing similar services in your area that are meeting the needs of your customers? It also depends on, well, who are your target customers there? Like, is this a high expenditure? Is this a premiumized service, or is this a service where it's little bit of money that people are paying for it and not many people demand it? So I don't know if anybody else has anything to take on it, but has anything else to say on it, but I will need more information before we could give you a proper answer on that.
You're saying there are other companies, other businesses doing the same type of work.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything that makes you different? Is there anything that makes you stand out at your business?
It could be even something like customer service. You provide better customer service than anybody else. You call to follow up, and you remind your clients when it's time to landscape. That's a huge edge, especially in our market.
Yeah, and I think
I was
also,
just,
go ahead, Ben.
sorry, I was just going to add, right? So there's no such thing, you can't call an investment good or bad just by the nature or the industry of the investment, right? It really comes down to these metrics right here, right? Knowing your customers, what's your competitive advantage, right? Numbers in place, your team, all those different things will kind of always put yourself in an advantageous position, right? So saying that a landscaping business can or cannot be a good investment just by the nature of it being a landscaping business is never enough, right? We wouldn't be able to make that call just like that. But if you have a landscaping business and you know your clients very, very well, you know how to capture new clients, your service or your service that you offer is second to none, and you continuously work on the service that you're offering, your business will become investable, right?
And I think, so Nicole, I see you're saying here that you're asking, since the international tourism industry is on pause at the moment. So I'm wondering if it's because you normally operate within more of the tourism industry and are looking for another business to run while the tourism industry is on pause. And if that's the case, then I think which we've seen and which we spoke to some businesses about earlier last year when they were in a similar situation. It really depends on how much experience and what you have in terms of the building blocks for starting this new business. So if it's that you have some of the equipment already in place, if it's that you have some clients identified, if you have the skills on both the customer service and the technical side to be able to launch this type of business quickly, then it is maybe a possibility. In terms of whether it's a good investment, that question could be interpreted in two ways. As Zenon and Kevin would have covered, in terms of the investability of the company itself from external investors, that's maybe a different question, a different set of questions to ask than whether it's a business that you personally should invest in to start. But what we always say is that even if you're investing in the business yourself, you should be looking at the various aspects of the business that we would have covered to make sure that you can hit some of those metrics at the beginning. So to make sure that you do have sort of the skills, the general skills that you need. Do you have an understanding of how much a business like that costs to run? What are some of the running costs? What are the various revenue streams? What are the types of receivables and account payables that you're going to have to be dealing with? What are the types of financial arrangements that you have to put in place? How would you structure that type of company, right? So those are all things that we think about when answering that type of question. And of course, if you have follow-ups, please reach out to us, because we may not be able to answer all of your questions to sort of the full extent and with all the details, because with more information, we could probably provide even more detailed answers. And then, so I see we have a couple more questions, and Stefan had also put some questions in the chat. So we'll answer Stefan's questions first, and then we can come over to the last two questions from Shanice, from Kriyana, and from someone who wishes to remain anonymous. We actually have three left. So Stefan was asking, what are some of the mandatory skill sets that are needed or found in any business? And I would say it depends on if you're talking about any business or if you're talking about an investable business. So if you look at the roundtable platform assessment, we will identify certain aspects of every business in which it's important to see if there's a person either within the company or providing the function in a partnership with the company. We've identified most of them there. It would be, you're looking at HR, you're looking at the financial strength and the accounting side. You also need to make sure, and going back to the fundamentals, thanks Kevin, you also need to make sure usually strong companies, especially businesses, both service and product businesses, have someone who's focused on marketing, and sales, someone who is focused on leadership, who is the leader, who's strategically leading the company, and someone who's focusing on making sure that the corporate structures and the governance structures are in place and monitoring how those are being input and run. So it sounds like a lot, but even for sole traders, we found that when you're asking these questions, it could be that it's just them doing all of the functions, but the functions all have to get done. Because without those functions, you tend to have some gaps. Now, you don't need all the functions all the time. So if, for example, so you may not need, for example, a lawyer all of the time, but it's good to have a legal resource that you can reach out to reliably in case you need either legal advice or legal input on a document, putting together, for example, your agreements, but also putting together your contracts, making sure that you're covering those bases. You want to make sure that that's done well. So even if you have to contract that out, it's still something to think about when you're starting out. Any other things, anything that I'm missing?
I think you covered everything, and the only thing I would add there is, in addition to, so there's skills or there's elements of this where you may need to certainly reach out to folks. So for example, if you don't have an accounting background, or if you're not familiar with the best practices for human resources, but you may be really strong in sales and leadership. So sometimes what I find to be helpful is kind of to time block. So to say, I mean, we've seen this a lot from, online from different development folks, but essentially kind of say, okay, right now I'm wearing my CEO hat. So I'm going to give time to thinking about the strategy of my company. And then I take off that hat and I'm looking at my CFO hat, and I'm going to look at the numbers of my business and see how things are going. And you do that as frequently as you need to, but essentially most sole traders are wearing several hats. And in order to find that time and really make sure that things don't get lost, it's to dedicate the time to do it, because it is critical once you can do it. Yep.
And then, so I think, so I know we're running.
All right, so we're running close to time.
There's a couple more questions in the chat that I wanted to cover. So Kriana was asking if she has to give up shares in her business to become investable. And the answer to that question is no, you don't have to. Depends on the type of investment that you're looking for. So Kevin or Alicia, you want to explain that a little bit more?
Do you have to give up share? Go ahead, Alicia.
So yeah, if you're going for an equity investment, meaning it's not a loan, so they're putting money into the business and they're expecting a particular return, perhaps over a period of time, then you'd have to give up shares, yes, or some form of shares. But if you are going to the bank, then what you would need to provide is more collateral, right? So it depends on what investment you're looking for. Of course, with equity, it's not necessarily some people look at it as cheaper because you don't have interest attached to it, but the return that an investor is looking for is going to be a lot higher than if you go to the bank. Without getting too technical, the answer is no, you don't have to give up shares necessarily.
Next question. Should a potential business owner take into consideration the state of the economy before jumping in, or is it not that important? Oh, definitely. You mean, yeah, look at the state of the economy, the state of the world. You have to take that in.
Yes, you should definitely take that into consideration, but I wouldn't look at a recession as necessarily meaning not to go forward. That means is you need to look at what the condition, like what's happening. So for example, if you had cash in 2008, and I mean a lot of cash in 2008-9, you got real estate very cheaply. That was a great time for a lot of people. On the flip side, of course, you may not, and Spanx, right, which is I don't know if you all know that company. It's a women's shapewear company. She became a billionaire in the middle of the recession. There are many businesses that start off in recession. So a recession is a normal economic cycle, right? It just, the economy will always go up and down. It's just to really look at what's happening, understand that, okay, today I'm probably not going to go open a hotel, right, tomorrow. But I might purchase the real estate cheaply because nobody else is opening a hotel. And I know that tourism is going to come back in 5 to 10 years or whatever I think it is. So that may be a good opportunity. So it's really just kind of looking at realistically what's happening in the market, what can I do to take advantage of the current situation. And, you know, so it's a recession is not, it does not equal failure, right? So
Yeah.
But one thing to remember there as well is it's what's also important is your risk appetite. So you
yes,
know how much risk you're able to take. Because, for example, you know, if you have a lot of financial obligations, if you know that you're not someone who is comfortable doing something with high risk, then that's something to take into account as well when you're determining when and how to start a business. There's always some risk inherent in business startup, depending on the type of business. So if, for example, you're looking for a business that is heavy in capital startup costs, then that may not be something that you're willing to get into, and in an economy where you have to provide all the capital startup costs, right? Mm-hmm. You don't really have that much flex when it comes to that. So it may be that you're looking for something where the startup costs are lower, and where if you have to exit the business, you're not taking a huge hit. So before I would say, like, in one of the aspects that you need to consider before starting is, what's my risk appetite? How much risk am I willing to take? How much am I willing to lose? Because the fact is that for a business that does succeed, even and irrespective of the economic conditions, there are many that don't. So it is a risk, but there could also be a great reward.
And I mean, you know, there's a common saying, high risk, high reward. And if you do what everybody else is doing, that's the quickest way to not make money. You know, if you do, you kind of need to go against the grain in order to see those big rewards. Now that, again, I will always harp on what Zara said, appreciate your own risk appetite. If you're going to give yourself an ulcer, don't do it. So it's not going to be worth it. But if you can handle the risk, so for example, we're in the middle of a recession, but a lot of apps popped up recently in Trinidad during 2020. Everybody's on their phone now ordering food and paying $40 plus for delivery because we weren't leaving our homes in 2020. So that is, you know, that's an opportunity that came up because of the pandemic. And, you know, so a recession, again, I want to hop on that, is not equal doom and gloom. It's just really kind of adjusting for the economy.
In every, don't let a great crisis go to waste. In every crisis, there's opportunity.
Exactly.
All right. So the last question. I took over my family business late last year. There was no accounting done in the past years. However, I want to start preparing financials, but I have no idea how much money was spent on investing activities. How do I start preparing the financials moving forward?
That is a great question. So that's a question that I would throw to an accountant.
Yeah, so I would
I'm not qualified to answer that.
Call Wayne Diaz, tell him to get whatever you have available, even if it's some receipts in a shoebox. I have some right across there, and I need to go and take to my accountant. But let Wayne Diaz have a look at that, or any accountant that you trust, and really get those numbers in order, right? We don't all need to be accountants. We just need to understand what's been happening, and get a trusted accountant to walk you through what's been happening with your business.
Exactly. And it may not, I mean, it may or may not, Wayne will know better, an accountant will know better, but it may or may not matter how much cash was spent previously versus what the value of those assets that you have is, you know? So it's almost like you might, I think you may need to start from scratch from an accounting perspective, but please don't take my word for it. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. You know, I would contact a professional there, but it seems like it's something that's totally manageable. I can't imagine you're the first person ever to encounter this.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Shanice. We look forward to our strategy session with you.
Yeah.
And congratulations once again. All right, I think that brings us to a close plus 5 minutes. Elena, Stefan, we thank you for having us today, and we're going to pass it over to you to take it away to wrap us up.
Right. Okay, folks, thanks again for attending this second of 4 sessions of this ECU Entrepreneurial Bootcamp webinar series. Please feel free to reach out to Kevin and his team at becomeinvestable.com. They have given the contact details. I don't know if Kevin you want to put back up the last slide with the contact details there. Let everybody get a chance to jot it down if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, I thought I had a shortcut for that, but I didn't. So I'm just kind of seeking to.
As always, Eastern hopes to continue to add value to Tobago by providing these informative educational outreach programs for our members and the wider Tobago community. We want to thank Mr. Valley and his team of extremely knowledgeable panelists for availing us of their services tonight. And special mention again for Ms. Elena Dyer for organizing the webinar series itself and for facilitating on the back end tonight. Happy birthday again, Elena.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, guys.
Yay!
Thanks for a great
Everybody in the chat should
session.
tell Elena happy birthday. She's worked really hard.
Happy birthday.
It's time
And
for her to
see you
get a
all
drink
on
with us.
Friday
All right.
for the amazing Dr. Terry Carell Reed, who's going to walk us through the social media transaction.
Correct. Took
Great.
the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say next, but yes. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, team. And we'll
Thanks a
see you
lot.
again on Friday.